Ever wondered why people become completely obsessed with those who seem utterly indifferent to them? Why does someone who ignores us suddenly become irresistible, while those desperately pursuing us lose all their charm? Picture this scenario. You're at a party, and there's that one person everyone wants to be around, but instead of fighting for their attention like everyone else, you stay distant, almost uninterested. Suddenly, they're the ones seeking your gaze, finding excuses to get closer. Sigmund Freud understood this mechanism over a century ago. According to the father of psychoanalysis, our minds are driven by unconscious forces that make us crave what we cannot have. Strategic indifference isn't cruelty, it's pure psychology that strikes the deepest chords of the human unconscious. Today, I'll reveal 6 Freudian secrets that explain why ignoring someone the right way can completely transform power dynamics in any relationship. Get ready to discover truths that will forever change how you see human connections. If you want to keep exploring the secrets of human behavior, subscribe to the channel. The first principle we'll uncover together will leave you speechless. The first secret Freud intuited involves what we now call the principle of psychological scarcity. Our unconscious mind automatically assigns greater value to what we perceive as rare or difficult to obtain. Imagine being in a store where all products are available in unlimited quantities, except one labeled "last item available." Which one captures your attention most? Exactly, the scarce one. The same dynamic activates in human relationships with even greater force. Freud explained this phenomenon through the concept of libido, the psychic energy that drives our desires. When someone is always available, always present, always ready to respond, our libido relaxes. There's no tension, no challenge, no mystery to solve. Our unconscious classifies that person as already conquered and automatically shifts attention elsewhere. But when someone maintains a certain distance, when they're not always reachable, when their attention seems like a prize to be earned, something extraordinary happens in our psyche. What Freud called the principle of deferred pleasure activates, the tension between desire and satisfaction that makes the object of our interest incredibly more appealing. This isn't manipulation, it's applied psychology. When you maintain a selective presence in someone's life, you're communicating a powerful message to their unconscious. I have value, and my time isn't infinitely available to you. The other person's unconscious immediately responds to this signal, increasing your perceived value in their mental priority map. The mechanism is so deep, it works even when we're aware of it. Even if we rationally know someone is strategically ignoring us, our unconscious continues reacting as if that scarcity were authentic. It's proof of how powerful these psychic automatisms that Freud identified really are. The practical application is revolutionary. Instead of always being the first to text, call, or suggest plans, start creating spaces of silence. Don't disappear completely. That would be counterproductive. But alternate moments of intense presence with moments of calculated distance. The person will start wondering, what are they doing? Why haven't they responded yet? Maybe I've been taking them for granted. And in that moment of uncertainty, your value in their mind multiplies exponentially. Have you ever noticed how the most fascinating people always have something mysterious, something not completely decipherable about them? It's not coincidence. Their charm comes precisely from this skillful management of psychological scarcity. But beware, there's a fine line between strategic scarcity and authentic indifference. In the next chapter, you'll discover how the modern Oedipal complex explains why certain behaviors make us irresistible, while others make us seem simply disinterested. The second Freudian secret touches one of the deepest aspects of our psyche, the Oedipal complex, and how it manifests in adult relationships. Freud had discovered that many of our relational patterns are unconsciously modeled on relationships we experienced in childhood. Imagine someone who grew up with an emotionally distant parent, perhaps a father who gave affection only when school results were excellent, or a mother who alternated moments of warmth with periods of unexplained coldness. That person as an adult will be instinctively attracted to partners who reproduce the same pattern. Available intermittently, affectionate only under certain conditions. This unconscious mechanism is called compulsion to repeat, the psyche's tendency to recreate familiar situations even when they're painful. Our unconscious constantly seeks to resolve unresolved childhood conflicts, even if this means being attracted to people who make us suffer. This is why strategic indifference works so well. It reactivates these primordial patterns. When someone maintains controlled distance, when they're not emotionally always available, when their attention seems to need to be earned, they're unconsciously reproducing those familiar dynamics that our brain recognizes as love. Freud had intuited that what we call love at first sight is often unconscious recognition of already known relational patterns. We don't fall in love with the person themselves, but with the familiar sensation of having to conquer an affection that seems to slip away. The practical application of this principle is powerful. Instead of being the perfect partner, always understanding, always available, start showing your human imperfections. Alternate moments of great emotional presence with moments when you're absorbed in your projects, your passions, your independent life. It's not about being cold or cruel, but about being authentically human, complex, multidimensional, not completely predictable. This type of behavior resonates deeply with the other person's unconscious, which recognizes in you the same emotional complexity they learn to associate with authentic love. The paradox is that the more you try to be perfect for someone, the less interesting you become. Perfection is reassuring, but boring. Authentic imperfection, dosed intelligently, is magnetic because it reflects the complexity of the human condition we all intimately recognize. When you apply this principle, you'll notice an immediate change. The person will start investing more emotional energy in the relationship with you. Their unconscious will interpret your complexity as a fascinating challenge, something to understand and conquer. But there's an even deeper aspect to consider: the projection mechanism. Have you ever noticed how people attribute qualities to those who ignore them that they might not actually possess? In the third chapter, you'll discover how Freud explained this phenomenon through the concept of projection, and how you can use it to become exactly what the other person desires, without changing who you really are. The third Freudian secret involves one of the most fascinating mechanisms of the human psyche: projection. When someone maintains a veil of mystery, our mind automatically starts filling in the blanks with the qualities we most desire. Imagine meeting a fascinating person at a dinner party. They speak little about themselves, answer your questions elegantly, but without revealing too much, smile mysteriously when you try to probe deeper. What happens in your mind? You immediately start imagining, I wonder what interesting life they must have. They probably have had extraordinary experiences. They must be a very deep person. Freud understood that our unconscious hates informational voids. When we don't have enough data about a person, our psyche automatically activates the projection mechanism. We attribute to the other the qualities that most attract us, the traits we most desire in a partner. This process is completely involuntary. We can't control it. We can only be aware of it. And the extraordinary thing is that the more mysterious a person remains, the more positive qualities we tend to project onto them. It's as if our unconscious says, if I can't know them completely, they must have something special to hide. The mechanism amplifies when that person shows occasional flashes of depth or intelligence, followed by new silences. Each small revelation confirms our positive projections, while each silence opens space for new fantasies. It's a self-reinforcing cycle that can make someone irresistible without them having to actually do anything extraordinary. The practical application of this principle requires subtle mastery. You must learn to share yourself in small doses. Instead of telling your whole story in one evening, let the other person discover your layers of depth gradually. Each revelation should open new questions instead of closing the circle of curiosity. When someone asks about your life, your dreams, your passions, don't reveal everything. Offer a taste, a hint, then elegantly shift the conversation. This doesn't mean being evasive or false. It means being selective, sharing your most precious truths only with those who prove they deserve them. The result is magical. The person will start seeing qualities in you that you might not even possess, but that they desperately want to find in someone. And the beautiful thing is that often, in trying to live up to these positive projections, we actually end up developing some of those qualities. Freud called this phenomenon self-fulfilling prophecy. When someone sees us as mysterious and fascinating, we unconsciously tend to behave in ways that confirm that perception. But beware, projection also has a dark side. There's a moment when mystery can transform into mistrust, when distance becomes alienation. In the 4th chapter, you'll discover the mechanism of creative frustration, how Freud explained the subtle balance between desire and satisfaction that keeps attraction alive over time. The 4th Freudian secret touches a fundamental paradox of human nature. We need a certain level of frustration to keep desire alive. Freud called it the principle of deferred pleasure, but I prefer to define it as creative frustration. Imagine being hungry and entering a restaurant where they immediately serve you any dish you order in unlimited quantities. Initially, it will seem fantastic, but soon that immediate abundance will take the flavor out of every bite. Now imagine instead an exclusive restaurant where you have to book months in advance, where each dish is prepared with obsessive care and served at the perfect moment. Which experience has more value in your memory? In human relationships, exactly the same thing happens. When someone immediately satisfies our every emotional need, when they're always available, always understanding, always present, paradoxically, we start losing interest. Our unconscious interprets this total availability as lack of value. Freud had intuited that desire is born from the tension between what we want and what we can obtain. Without this tension, without this small distance between us and the object of our interest, desire dies out. It's an evolutionary mechanism. If everything is easy to obtain, it probably doesn't have great value for our survival. Creative frustration doesn't mean making the other person suffer, but creating a dynamic where satisfaction, when it comes, has a more intense flavor. It's the art of saying yes at the right moment and not now, when waiting can amplify pleasure. Applying this principle requires subtle understanding of timing and rhythms. When someone seeks you out, don't always be immediately available. When they propose something, don't always say yes to the first invitation. It's not about playing games or manipulating, but about respecting your genuine rhythms and priorities. The result is that each of your yeses acquires greater weight. Every moment you spend with that person becomes more precious because it's not taken for granted. Each of your attentions is perceived as an authentic gift, not as something owed. Freud had observed that in his happiest patients, love was never completely resolved. There was always a small uncertainty, a small challenge that kept the flame of desire alive. Not the destructive uncertainty that generates anxiety, but the creative kind that generates fascination. The right person for you will appreciate this emotional complexity of yours. Those who don't appreciate it were probably looking not for an authentic relationship, but for a source of constant validation. And you're not an emotional ATM. When you master creative frustration, you become irresistible, not because you're difficult, but because you're selective, not because you're cold, but because your warmth, when you offer it, is authentic and precious. But there's an even deeper element to consider: the role of the collective unconscious in our relational choices. In the 5th chapter, you'll discover how Freud interpreted the unconscious signals we continuously send and receive, and how you can use them to your advantage. The 5th Freudian secret concerns an almost telepathic dimension of human relationships, signals from the collective unconscious. Freud had intuited that we communicate continuously through channels beyond words, a primitive language that our ancestral brain understands perfectly. Imagine being in a crowded bar. Among all the people present, your gaze is captured by someone reading quietly in the corner, apparently indifferent to the surrounding chaos. That person hasn't looked at you, hasn't done anything to attract your attention, yet something in their attitude communicates an inner confidence you find magnetic. What you perceived weren't obvious words or gestures, but what Freud called the language of the unconscious, a series of micro-signals that transmit deep information about personality, values, inner strength. When someone maintains a certain emotional independence, when they don't seem desperately in need of attention or validation, they're sending a powerful signal to your unconscious. I'm fine alone. My happiness doesn't depend on your approval. This message is incredibly attractive because it indicates psychological stability, a quality our primitive brain associates with an ideal partner. The paradox is that the more you try to impress someone, the more your unconscious sends signals of insecurity. Every desperate attempt to please, every excessive availability, every disproportionate emotional reaction is perceived by the other person's unconscious as need, and need, evolutionarily speaking, isn't attractive. Freud had observed that the most fascinating people were those who seemed complete even alone. They weren't looking for their missing half in the other, but for a complement to their already satisfying life. This inner completeness translates into a series of micro-behaviors that others' unconscious interprets as high value. The practical application of this principle is transformative. Instead of focusing on what to do to please the other person, concentrate on how to feel good with yourself in their presence. When you're genuinely centered on your interests, your projects, your personal growth, you naturally emanate those signals of emotional independence that prove magnetic. It's not about faking indifference, but about cultivating real inner richness. When your life is full of passions, goals, meaningful relationships, you don't need to desperately cling to a single person to feel complete. This attitude is unconsciously perceived as security, and security is perhaps the most attractive quality you can possess. Not arrogant security, but the serene kind of those who know they have value regardless of others' judgment. The right person will naturally be attracted to this completeness of yours, while those looking for someone to save or control will automatically distance themselves. It's a natural filter that saves you time and emotional energy. But Freud had identified one last decisive element, the transformative power of strategic withdrawal. In the 6th chapter, you'll discover the most powerful technique for making someone realize your value, precisely when you're about to exit their life. The 6th and most powerful Freudian secret is strategic withdrawal, a psychological mechanism that can literally transform indifference into obsession. Freud had observed that we often fully appreciate something's value only when we risk losing it. Imagine having a friend who's always present in your life, texts you daily, is available for every problem, participates in every event. Their presence becomes so taken for granted that you almost stop noticing it. Then suddenly that person starts being less present. They don't disappear, but become more selective with their time. What happens in your mind? You start wondering, where did they go? Did I do something wrong? I miss their presence. This is the power of strategic withdrawal, not total disappearance, but calibrated reduction of your emotional availability. Freud called this mechanism adult separation anxiety, the same dynamic that drives a child to desperately seek a parent's attention when they move away. Strategic withdrawal works because it activates our relational conservation instinct. When we perceive someone pulling away from our life, our primitive brain sounds the alarm. Warning, you're about to lose an important resource. And suddenly, that person, whom we perhaps took for granted, becomes precious. But beware. Strategic withdrawal isn't a whim or revenge. It's a technique that works only when authentic, when it comes from a genuine need for space to grow, to focus on your goals, to take care of yourself. If it's just calculated manipulation, the other person will feel it at an unconscious level. Correct application involves 3 phases. First, you gently communicate that you need time for yourself, for an important project, to reorganize your priorities. Second, you maintain silence for a defined period. You don't vanish into thin air, but drastically reduce contact. Third, when you reappear, you do so with renewed energy and presence. During this period of distance, something extraordinary happens in the other person's mind. They start reviewing all past moments with you through a different lens. Those gestures they took for granted now they recognize as special. That presence of yours that seemed obvious now, they deeply miss. The result is that when you return to their life, you're no longer the same person they had taken for granted. You've become someone who proved they can live perfectly well without them, someone who chose to return not from need, but from authentic desire. Freud understood that this mechanism awakens the dormant conquest instinct. The person who before considered you already conquered now must start courting your attention again. And in this process, they often rediscover feelings they had buried or never acknowledged. Strategic withdrawal is the ultimate demonstration of your value. You're strong enough to be fine alone, secure enough not to need constant attention, mature enough to prioritize your personal growth. And paradoxically, precisely this independence makes you irresistible to those who know how to recognize authentic value. Here we are at the end of this journey into the depths of the human psyche. We've explored together 6 principles that Freud intuited more than a century ago, and that modern neuropsychology continues to confirm today. The final question is, are you ready to apply this Freudian wisdom in your life, or will you continue desperately chasing those who don't truly appreciate you? If this content has illuminated hidden aspects of your relationships, write in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how extensive our community of human psyche explorers is. Don't forget to hit that like button if these principles made you think, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other secrets of human psychology. Share this video with anyone you think could benefit from these profound truths. Together, we can make human relationships more conscious and authentic. Thanks for traveling with me into the depths of the human mind. See you in the next video to explore other mysteries of psychology.